Hello again, this is John Ballantyne with yet another video. So this is going to be called the 2-card spread part 1 extra. It was going to be part 2, but I want to tell you a couple of things so that part 2 will be more enjoyable and better. And it's okay. I want to deal with a particular problem that just about everybody has, because if you're talking to somebody, it's okay. You can help them, you can give them advice, whatever it happens to be. But then if you bring out tarot cards, you get stuck, or you don't know what to say, or whatever it happens to be, because it's a bit like there's a barrier between you and the reader and the questioner at the time. And I want to explain what I think is going on during a tarot reading, what the problem is, and how we can solve it, so that we don't turn a card and not know what to say about it. So this is actually part of an online class that I'm putting together, and it's about what's in it for you if you happen to take the class. So I had expected to make a few points, maybe show you some kind of list and work through each one, but I realized as I was going through that there's one major problem that people have, and there's one good reason to understand certain things. So I'm going to tell you what the problem is with reading cards, and then show you how to fix it. And I'm going to give you examples so you can understand what to do, and then you can go off and work at a solution at your own speed. So in the beginning, when you're doing a reading for people, you've got a few things going for you. You've got common sense, that's important. You've got empathy for people. Probably a desire to help as well, but maybe you don't have that much experience in reading cards. But even if you don't have much experience, you're still able to give good advice, because you already know good advice. Maybe you've been through what the question is going through, so you know what to do, you know what works, what doesn't work, right? And you can always explain those points to the questioner, and they're better off for having had that time with you and had that experience of you, giving them feedback on their situation or their problem. This because you've lived a bit, right? Whatever age you are, you've still got some experience. And if it's a work situation, maybe you've worked in a kind of situation like that, so you know basically what to do. So that can be one kind of reading, but it's not really reading the tarot. And you want to be able to turn cards and interpret them to give greater insight to the questioner, I think anyway. So you may have read some meanings from a book, but you want to put it all together, or be able to read the flow in the spread, and maybe choose the right meanings from a list that you've made, or a couple of lists that you've made of what a particular card might mean. So let's say you're in the kitchen or the living room with a friend of yours, and let's say her name is Mary, because to be able to say Mary instead of the questioner all the time. So let's say Mary has a problem, and you're listening and giving support and giving advice, maybe figuring out the best things you can do at that point to deal with that particular problem, and it could be an easy problem or a really complicated one. So if you're not sure what to say, you say, I'm not sure what to say, and Mary says, okay, that's all right. And maybe there's silence, or else Mary says, how about this? And she gives you a couple of examples. So you give your critique or your feedback or opinion about what she's said, and ideally at the end you finish up with Mary in a better position to solve her problems, or at least to deal more intelligently with them. And that I think means it's been a good reading, right? If the person goes off better able to deal sensibly with the situation that they're going through. You don't get stuck in that kind of conversation. Or if you do, you manage to keep going and you keep on track. And it's kind of a natural thing to do, to talk to people this way. However, let's say you introduce a deck of tarot cards into the meeting or into the conversation. So you pick a card or two and you turn them over and you look at them and nothing. You can't think of a meaning. You can't think of what to say. So you look up a word or two, but you can't make the connection between the supposed meaning of the card and the actual question that you're trying to answer. So you pick another card or one to explain what the first card means, and you get stuck. Maybe your brain freezes, something like that, and it's really annoying. And it's very different from the relaxed conversation we were having earlier before you brought out the cards. So something has changed, and it's easy to think that it's because you don't know enough meanings, or that you usually struggle to put it all together, as they say, or something like that. However, let's say you and a friend are having a conversation in a room and somebody else comes into the room. It could be a child, an adult, a stranger, it doesn't really matter. The thing is, we all know the atmosphere changes and you begin to think and behave differently because there's somebody else in the room, right? So if it's a child, maybe you stop talking about certain subjects. If it's a stranger, maybe you lower your voice, or you're aware that somebody else might be listening or trying to overhear what you're saying, so you change, and you maybe half your mind is distracted by the other person, and so you're not really fully focused on what you're talking about with your friend. And this is what's happening when you bring out a deck of cards. There's no longer just one relationship going on. Let's say you and Mary, or you and the other person. There are three, because there's you and the friend, there's you and the tarot, and there's the friend and the tarot. And it's like a triangle of relationships. So if you, the reader, say something based on the tarot or what the tarot indicates, and you give this to the questioner, it's a bit like an angle, right? There's the tarot, you and let's say Mary, but it's open. The third side is missing. So you're then like a translator. But translation works best when the listener already understands the language. And we want to be able to read for people who aren't familiar with or don't really understand the tarot. So imagine somebody working as a simultaneous translator at the United Nations. So they've got headphones on, they're listening to somebody speak, let's say Italian, and they're translating immediately into English for people listening in English. And let's say somebody hears what you're saying in English, but they then have to translate it into Greek because Greek is their first language and they understand things better in Greek. It can get complicated, and it can be confusing as well, and you can get stuck. So translation like that works best if the listener already understands what you're talking about. But let's say the person doesn't understand the tarot. So if you go back to Mary, she might have certain ideas about what the tarot is and what it can do, what it should do. Her expectations may be too much or too little, or they may be weird or superstitious. And she might think, as some people do, and you probably have experience of this as well, that people tend to think that the tarot is somehow magically going to solve all their problems. So you're going to say one word or one sentence, and then suddenly life is going to be fine, and everything will be solved, and they're going to be happy, and they're going to go out and live a full life and live happily ever after. So if somebody has that expectation, it puts you, the reader, in a difficult position, because, you know, there is no magic bullet, there is no magical solution to every problem that the person has. So you may say something, and then the reader says, okay, that's over here, but can you get back to solving my life now? You know, or fix my life. And other people may think that deep down she really doesn't, she wants answers, but she really doesn't deserve them, right? Because she's a doormat. Because lots of people expect other people are going to walk all over them. And only if you're extra good will you get help. And even then, the tarot may pull the rug out from under their feet because they don't deserve help anyway. So you're often dealing with strange or difficulties going through the mind of the questioner. And that puts up a barrier between you and the answer. And we want to get rid of that barrier. The other thing is some people have religious backgrounds that tell them that the tarot is the work of the devil, and they're sinning by even being in the same room as the tarot. So somebody might think that they're really breaking the divine law by looking in that direction for help, looking to the tarot for help, even though the people that they normally would ask aren't doing them any good and aren't really giving them any help. So there's no reason why they can't turn to the tarot. So the reader somehow has to get past these types of barriers, or maybe just erase the influence of decades of misinformation or pressure that people have been under to be what they're not, right? So it's a tricky situation all around. The tarot will give you answers though, and I'm going to tell you that how in a minute. But first, if the reader looks at the card and uses some astrological correlation and says, okay, this card is Mercury in Sagittarius, or it's the 12th path in the Tree of Life, or it's some kind of elemental dignity, and starts explaining it all to the questioner, because the questioner doesn't know this stuff, the triangle is open, right? And you may as well be talking ancient Greek to somebody who isn't going to understand much, or who isn't really listening, because you're talking about Mercury and Sagittarius and the paths in the Tree of Life and the different spheres of whatever. So it's kind of the same if you bring up memorized meanings, right? The same kind of situation arises because you're talking the truth, maybe, if you've chosen the right meanings, but the questioner isn't hearing the truth, but only they're hearing words that have to be taken on trust. So what do? The solution is, and it's not complicated, but it maybe take a little bit of practice to get the hang of it. So what you do is, we know that we live in a visual world. There's signs all over the place telling us what we can and can't do. So you use the pictures on the cards. And the Rider deck is best for this. So you make the connection for the questioner with the tarot by dealing with and pointing out and describing the illustration, the picture on the card. And this gets beyond the person's misconceptions about the tarot and what it is and what it can do, because people understand pictures, right? They do. And you point to the picture and describe it or mention what's going on. And this closes the triangle or leads to expansion and growth. So it's you and Mary or whoever the questioner is and the tarot, and you're all interrelating. Instead of there being three relationships, it's one made up of three forces. Okay, so here's an example. Take the King of Cups. Okay, there's the King of Cups, right? And it's reversed. Okay, so you point to the King of Cups reversed, and the second card I want to look at the moment is the Six of Swords, right? Again, I'm using the Rider deck. So you look at the King of Cups, and you say to the person, this is a king. And we can all understand something about a king, right? You don't need specialised knowledge to know kings give orders, they're well respected, there's a long tradition behind them, whatever it happens to be. There's all sorts of things you can say about a king, but it's upside down. So let's say it shows lack of confidence, right? And everybody can understand this because the king gives orders, but either he hasn't been respected in the past, or he's expecting that people are going to ignore him and he's not going to be obeyed, right? So we can see the sense of the idea of lack of confidence with a king reversed. And the questioner who has no experience of the tarot can look at a king and see that makes sense. Then you see it's also the Suit of Cups. So maybe the lack of confidence is because somebody hurt his feelings. Cups are emotions, right? And that's a basic point. So he lacks confidence because somebody hurt his feelings. If it's the King of Pentacles, he lacks confidence because he doesn't have enough money. If it's King of Batons, he lacks reversed. He lacks confidence because he doesn't have any imagination. He doesn't have many ideas. Or King of Swords reversed, he lacks confidence because he doesn't have any courage. He's not willing to stand up and fight. And anybody can understand that. So the relationship between the questioner and the tarot is now a good one because they understand its pictures and its imagery, and it's something we can relate to. So then we look at the Six of Swords and point out that it shows movement, right? And because it's swords, we can probably say, swords is hardship, we can probably say that it's movement away from a difficult situation. So the questioner, let's say Mary in this case, she can visualize this kind of situation. You're in a boat going from one shore to the other, but at this point you're in the middle and you're being transported, or else you're the fellow doing the transporting if you're represented by the man in the back of the boat. So think of colours. If you take blue and yellow and make blue and yellow and put them together, you get green. Not blue-yellow anymore. It's green. It's a mixture or a blend. So you get a different colour. So if you take the reversed King of Cups and the Six of Swords and blend them, you don't just get lack of confidence plus movement, right? You get, for example, the idea of escape or flight. So there can be a sense of urgency as well. You want to get a move on, right? So the king being reversed doesn't feel he can fight or can't see how to overcome the situation or defeat his enemies. So he has to get out of there and get to a new place where things might be easier. So he feels unable. So you're dealing with inability. So if you blend that idea with the Six of Swords, whose picture shows movement, you get something like escape, which isn't just a change of place or condition. It's more urgent than that, and it's more serious and maybe more dramatic. So we can see the idea of escape, but there isn't a single card that means escape or flight. But by looking at the illustrations, you can engage the questioner because he or she can see and understand the reverse king as lack of power or inability of some sort, and can see the movement over water in the Six of Swords, but can understand the motivation behind the movement and the need to flee. So if you use the pictures on the cards, and the Rider deck is best because there was the knowledge and the understanding that A.E. Waite had and Pamela Coleman Smith when they designed the deck. They put it together in a particular way that makes sense, and in the same way that a golf course designed by Jack Nicklaus is going to be an awful lot better than a golf course designed by Lady Gaga or Justin Bieber. Those two are really good at what they do, but we don't expect them to produce golf courses. And in the same way, it's not easy to design a good tarot deck, but Pamela Coleman Smith and A.E. Waite did so. So, another example here is this is Three of Batons. Okay. So we've got somebody observing, right? The person's up high. They're on the hillside, overlooking the water, and there are ships in the water, and the ships are going off to a distance, right? So you have the idea of somebody observing, but it's not observing with a microscope, right? Where you zero in extremely close and see what the naked eye can't see. This is somebody overlooking what's going on. There's distance involved, right? So this can be distance in time, so they're looking into the future, or it can be distance physically. So you're dealing with foreign countries or places at a distance from where the observer is. So they're probably wondering about the future or about someone or something who's a long way away. And you don't know because you're here and not at the other place, not in that distant place or time. So let's say it's a business question. And this Three of Batons comes up. You get the idea of observing in time and place and distance. So you get the idea of wondering if your plans are going to work out later, like 2-year plan, 5-year plan. If it's upright, then you're probably quietly confident. But if it's reversed, you're looking for weaknesses in the plan, or expecting expecting that things are going to go wrong. So if the question is about setting goals, right, then you're thinking long term, right? That's distance in time. And you're wondering what should be the desired result. You're thinking about outcomes. And this is what you want, but is it possible? Or this is what I want, how can I make it possible? How can I make it come about? Whereas if it's a question about romance and the Three of Batons comes up, you take the idea of you've got the person looking and observing. So maybe they're remembering the early days of the relationship when things were going well, because that's what happens in the beginning. I think people are compatible, which is why they get together in the first place. So maybe the person's looking back in time to an earlier relationship, or maybe wondering what the future holds. And it's reversed. You know, you're wondering if what you did back then is going to return to haunt you. So that's 3 examples of looking at the illustration of the card and making sense of it and understanding what's going on and what the picture shows. And the good thing is, the questioner can look at that picture and understand in their own way, and maybe as well give you feedback that will help you, the reader, to be more focused on what the card means to answer the particular question. So this is only the beginning, and there's a lot more to say, but it should be enough to get you started. So next is going to be the 2-card spread part 2, which is about, it's one more way so you don't get stuck in doing a reading. And in the meantime, if you're interested, go to www.thetarot.ca and you find details about the home study course. So that's it. Thank you very much. Until the next time. Bye-bye.